The Little Girl with the Matchsticks. Once, in a small town during winter, it had been snowing for days, and it was terribly cold.
It was the last evening of the year, and it was already dark. In this bitter cold and darkness, a little poor girl walked down the streets.
She had no shoes, only a thin scarf and an apron. She had been wearing slippers when she left home. But what good would that do?
The child's slippers were too big for her small feet. They had once belonged to her mother.
However, the girl lost her shoes when she hurriedly crossed the street, trying to avoid two carriages racing by. One slipper was nowhere to be found, and a young boy made off with the other, shouting back at the girl that he would use it as a cradle when he had a child.
So the little girl continued down the cold streets. Her delicate feet were already red and blue from the relentless cold. In her old, worn-out apron, she carried a bunch of matchsticks. She tightly held one bundle of them in her hand.
She had been trying to sell the matches to the passers-by for hours, but all day long no one paid any attention to the girl, and so no one bought anything from the poor child.
Nor did anyone notice the girl's distress or offer her some alms. People were preoccupied with themselves. Hungry and frostbitten, the poor little girl continued to trudge along, looking utterly desperate and disheartened.
Snowflakes fell on her long blonde hair, which cascaded in the beautiful curls down her neck. Many children marveled at the wonder of snow, but could return home once they got cold.
Warm light radiated from all the windows, and the scent of delicious roast goose filled the streets. It was New Year's Eve, and this thought filled the senses of the little girl.
In a nook between two houses, one of which jutted out a bit farther into the street than the other, the shivering girl huddled. She had pulled her little legs close to her cold body, but that only made her feel even colder.
She didn't dare to go home, as she hadn't sold a single box of matches. She hadn't earned a single coin to take back. She would surely face a beating from a desperate father, and it was cold at home too. They had a roof over their heads, but the wind whistled chillingly.
Despite stuffing straw and rags into the biggest gaps, it was still cold inside. So she thought to herself,
"Oh, how a match would warm me up, if only I could dare to take one from the box, strike it against the wall, and warm my fingers by it."
For a moment she hesitated, but then, at last, the child pulled one out. Swoosh! It sparked brightly and shone. Then it caught fire.
The match emitted a warm, bright flame. The freezing girl reached out her small hand towards it to warm herself.
It was a peculiar light. It felt as if the little girl was sitting in front of a large iron stove with brass fittings and brass ornaments. The fire burned so beautifully and warmed so comfortably. The little girl was about to stretch out her feet to warm them as well.
But as quickly as the enchantment began, the flame went out again. The stove disappeared, and she sat there with a burned-out match in her hand.
She took a new one and lit it. It burned, it gleamed, and at the point where the light fell on the wall became transparent, as if she could now step through it.
The little girl gazed straight into the room where the table was set with a dazzling white tablecloth and fine porcelain. Steam wafted up from the roasted goose, filled with plums and apples.
And what was even more wonderful, the goose leapt out of the bowl and waddled across the floor with a fork and knife in its back, heading straight towards her.
Then the match went out, and only the thick, cold wall was visible. She lit another one. There, the little girl sat beneath the most magnificent and splendid Christmas tree she had ever seen.
It was even larger and more richly decorated than the one she had glimpsed through the shop's glass door on Christmas Eve as she wandered freezing through the streets.
Thousands of lights were burning on the green branches, and colorful pictures, like the ones displayed in the shop windows, looked down at her. The little girl reached both hands up toward them, and once again the match went out.
The numerous Christmas lights ascended higher and higher, and she now saw that they were bright stars. One of them fell and threw a long streak of fire across the sky.
"Now someone is dying," said the little girl, for she remembered her grandmother's words. Her grandmother had always treated her kindly and with love and goodness, but she had long since passed away. Yet she could still vividly recall her words. When a star falls, a soul ascends to God.
She struck another match against the wall, casting a white glow all around, and in the radiance of it, the old grandmother stood brightly illuminated, warm and friendly.
"Grandmother," cried the little girl, "oh, take me with you. I know that you'll vanish as soon as the match goes out, disappear like the warm tiled stove, the delicious roasted goose, and the grand shimmering Christmas tree."
She quickly struck the remaining matches left in the box. She wanted to hold on to her grandmother. The matches emitted such a radiance that it was brighter than in the daytime.
The grandmother had never looked so beautiful and grand. She took the little girl in her arms, and they soared upward in radiance and joy. The cold, hunger, and fear left the little girl's heart. She was with God.
But in the dark and gloomy corner of the house, on the cold morning of the last day of the old year, sat the little girl with rosy cheeks and a blissful smile on her face. She had frozen to death on the last day of the old year.
The morning of the new year dawned over the little lifeless body that sat with the burned-out matches against the cold wall.
She wanted to warm herself, they said. Had no one noticed her? And look at that blissful smile on her face.
But no one knew what beautiful things she had seen, in what radiance she had ascended with her old grandmother to the New Year's joy.
Follow our YouTube channel and don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. See you soon in the Graphic Kingdom.